In this short video, I just want to walk through the task for our infographic for chapter 18. So chapter 18 is tons of information, and I would like you to work with your small group that's been assigned through Canvas to take just a section of chapter 18, read it, understand it, and then present the information in a nice consolidated way that is easy for someone else to process. Um, so you'll be split up into groups and you will be given a set of instructions. So what I have here is our assignment page and everything is on here. There is instructions and a rubric for what to do for the assignment. But then I've also done the assignment as well, and I've provided my work along the way as an example. And so looking at our, let me pull it up, sorry, uh, instructions for our infographics, we are going to have every group read and research on the section that they're assigned, and then consolidate that information into an infographic. The goal with consolidating the information is to make it easier for your classmates to process rather than just reading the chapter on its own, and that's it, but also to get some practice with arranging information and consolidating information and get an opportunity for feedback before you start your poster for your chemistry innovation. There are a number of online infographic tools that I've listed a bunch of them here, and there are probably even more now because I pulled this list up last year. I made mine in PictoChart. It's free. It was pretty easy to use. And I was able to throw together an infographic after I had my notes and images together in about like 10 or 15 minutes. So not that bad. So I recommend using that. If working with infographic tools sounds awful, you can also use PowerPoint or Google Slides to arrange the information. The trick is it can only be one page, just one page or one info. Some of the infographic pages are like long, and that's okay. But there's no looking at multiple pages for this assignment. We need you to give us everything we need in just one small space. So the first step is to read your section and to then take careful notes. I did the non-metal section and I provided you my notes. So I took just notes, and I also then, in a slightly different blue color, went through and kind of left my questions and my thoughts along the side as I was reading it. So chapter 18.4 gives this overview of nonmetals. And as I was reading it, and you'll notice about the book, sometimes it just kind of glosses over something or it mentions something but doesn't go into detail. And so I tried to highlight those areas where I still had questions as I read. Um, and so I have like a full 2 pages of notes on this. And I have a few places where I had questions or I linked it to something I had read earlier. And I found there were a couple of things that I thought were interesting. I also tried to mark where I saw interesting pictures in the textbook, things that I thought were particularly interesting for sharing, like phosphorus makes fire. How cool is that? Or it glows in the dark. Also cool. Phosphorus, it turns out, is fascinating. And sulfur was cool too, but phosphorus. So take detailed notes, and then the idea is to take all of those notes, look at it, and pull out the information that you think is the most important to share. And then try to arrange that information in a way that makes sense to a reader. And so highlighting what's most important is kind of the first piece. One thing I would also like you to do once you have your notes and everything you think is cool and noteworthy, I want you to take one piece of information or one topic within your topic that the book just didn't cover well enough, but you're still interested in. For me, this was actually fluorine. There was an interesting comment. Let me find it in my notes. That right here. So it says that the nonmetals include the most and the least reactive elements. And so it didn't really go into more detail about which was which. And so was it phosphorus that was the most reactive? And I was like, let's research this more. And so I then did. And when I went and did some searching for our nonmetals in general, there you go. I just started Googling around what's the most reactive elements, and I learned a lot more about fluorine. And I found this website that talks about fluorine as the most reactive element. Let me get that. Well, never mind. And so this article goes into how it's the most reactive one, and it talks more about fluorine's reactivity. And I was like, oh, my question's been answered. The textbook didn't really tell me which of the nonmetals was the most reactive and least. But by hunting around online, I was able to find a fairly reliable source that lets me know it's fluorine. And so I would like you to take one point of what you learn about and research it more. Doesn't mean you have to go into the primary literature. Secondary sources are fine, but I'd like you to look around at a couple sources. And so I'm going to then take my notes from this kind of little side research, and I'm going to take the notes from my chapter, and I'm going to take that information and then combine that into one slide in PowerPoint. Or one infographic. It helped me to grab images from the textbook or that I found online to kind of support the points that I thought were more interesting, kind of, and throw them all into a PowerPoint slide just so I had them all in one place to play with them. And this is kind of what I came up with. Let me make it a little smaller so you can see it all. So I have a clear title about what this is about. I have images that go along with the points I'm making. I'm using bullet points when possible and shorter sentences. And I'm trying to make sure there's a clear connection between the image that my statement is about and the statement. And I used arrows to do that, or I put something right above it. So that way someone can look at this and take information away from it about nonmetals. I can see these allotropes for phosphorus and carbon. I can see that the least reactive are the noble gases and the most reactive is fluorine. And I'm not going to worry too much about tons of citations on the images for this. I'm more interested in your ability to arrange information. I took this stuff and I then was like, let's try out some infographic tools. And I did the Pico chart, and it looks way prettier. It is also, one of the things about infographics is it's easier to make it look less crowded. You have to really reduce the amount of information that you have to just the most important, which is extremely challenging because it is also interesting, and it's really hard to decide at times what is really important. So it helps to talk about it, to just grab someone who doesn't know, like isn't in the class and doesn't know what you're talking about, or grab someone you're studying with in the class and talk through your section and be like, here are the things I thought were interesting, and how we talk about it or write about it. Sometimes we can decide, oh, you know, it seems like I'm really focusing on reactivity. I'm going to have a whole section on most and least reactive and why they're that way. I'm going to talk about oxidation states because there's so many different oxidation states possible for these. I'm going to talk about allotropes for sure because most of my nonmetals are going to have a really interesting like allotrope like pattern to it. Like phosphorus is really different if it's white versus red phosphorus. And then categorize that information into sections and try to make it as simple and easy to read as possible. The idea is you want someone to be able to look from afar and be attracted to your poster. That's why there's a picture of something on fire. And you want the images to be easy to follow with the eye, and you want the information to be simple to absorb and to understand. So those are my examples. Good luck with this project, and let me know if you have any questions along the way.